I believe the Ruthless Aggression Era is the best era in WWE, better than the Attitude Era, and I'm going to explain why. There's no question the Attitude Era is the most popular era throughout WWE's history. Pop culture in the 90s was a huge thing, not just with wrestling, but I mean, look at all the TV shows that came out, during that time frame that are still legendary to this day. You had TV shows like Friends, Seinfeld, The Fresh Prince, Sister Sister, Boy Meets World, Martin. I mean, so many popular and legendary TV shows that came from that time frame that are still popular to this day that will live on forever. It wasn't just TV shows either. I mean, the movies that came out around that time, movies like, Pulp Fiction, Home Alone is a freaking classic. The Titanic, one of the most highest grossing movies in history. Other legendary movies like Scream and Shawshank Redemption, not to mention the Disney movies like The Lion King, Aladdin, and Mulan. Music pop culture back then was also a huge thing, like artists like Tupac, Biggie, Nirvana, TLC, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Wu-Tang Clan, just to name a few. The point to all that is there were so many popular things that were on that time frame with movies, music, TV shows, fashion, wrestling, like pop culture was huge. Probably the best era of pop culture around that time frame. Which is a huge reason why wrestling, I believe, was so popular with viewership and ratings around that time, because things were just so cool, and you could get away with a lot of things on TV. If you watch the Attitude Era, there were a lot of things they did in the Attitude Era that you can never do on TV nowadays. The Ruthless Aggression Era may not have had, the viewership that the Attitude Era did. Like, I don't think any era will ever come as close when it comes to ratings and viewership like the Attitude Era did. But look at all the superstars that were around during the Ruthless Aggression Era. You had talent like Brock Lesnar, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, JBL, Kurt Angle, The Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Randy Orton, Edge, Chris Jericho, Kane, Big Show, Booker T, Batista, RVD, Bobby Lashley, CM Punk. All these superstars were around during the same exact era. Some of these superstars, yes, were around in the Attitude Era, but I can make the argument, if you ask me, that some of the superstars that were around in the Attitude Era, they got better during the Ruthless Aggression Era. I'll name a few. Edge was around during the Attitude Era, but he by far was better in the Ruthless Aggression Era. He was a tag team wrestler during the Attitude Era. Had great tag team matches with the Dudleys and the Hardys, but didn't become a main event caliber superstar until the Ruthless Aggression Era. That's when he peaked as a top PO, as a top level main event star. JBL was another guy who was in a tag team during the Attitude Era with the APA and Farouk, Ron Simmons. Then he moved to the Ruthless Aggression Era and had one of the best WWE Championship runs of that era, became one of the top heels of that era. If you look at JBL and the APA and you would have said this guy is going to become one of the best heels of that era in all time and have a great run as WWE Champion, I would have said you capping. Kurt Angle had good success in the Attitude Era. He was around then, but he had better matches during the Ruthless Aggression Era, better feuds, and he was just a better overall main eventer during the Ruthless Aggression Era. Yep, I'm saying The Undertaker. The Undertaker was great during the Attitude Era, with the Ministry of Darkness and moving to the American Badass, but I think he was better during the Ruthless Aggression Era. I think he had better matches during the Ruthless Aggression Era, and you could argue that he had better feuds as well. I'm gonna keep it 100. Triple H was great in the Attitude Era, but his best years in the WWE were during the Ruthless Aggression Era. Look how many times he main evented WrestleMania, or he was the world champion, or had great matches, or had great feuds. His faction with Evolution, like Triple H, was one of the top 3 best stars of that era, you could say. Booker T was around in the Attitude Era. He was cool. Better in the Ruthless Aggression Era. King Booker, I think, solos anything he did in the Attitude Era. King Booker made Booker T a world champion. Eddie Guerrero, he was around during the Attitude Era. Better in the Ruthless Aggression Era. Became a bigger star, main event caliber guy, had better matches. Like, Eddie Guerrero was better in the Ruthless Aggression Era. The Attitude Era had some of the most popular storylines of all time. Austin vs. Rock, Austin vs. McMahon, Kane vs. The Undertaker. But I think the Ruthless Aggression Era, although they may not have had as many popular storylines of that era, I think they had a lot more better storylines for longevity. The rise and fall of Evolution, the beginning of the faction when they brought in 2 guys who were the upcoming future in Randy Orton and Batista, grooming them to become main event stars, and for them to break out, and then they became main event guys. Run through a couple of more. Shawn Michaels and Triple H, they had a phenomenal feud. Matt Hardy and Edge and Lita. That feud was personal and it was real and it was must-watch TV. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero had a good feud, even though you look back and it's like, man, that's crazy they had a match for the custody of a child. But I mean, they had consistently good matches. The storyline was must-watch as well. It kept you on your feet. John Cena versus Edge, one of the most legendary rivalries in WWE history. The Ruthless Aggression Era also, I've said this many times, had the best WrestleManias of any era. There were no bad WrestleManias in the Ruthless Aggression Era. WrestleMania 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 were all good, solid WrestleManias that have tons of memorable moments, very rewatchable. You go back and rewatch so many moments from that time, so many matches. Like, those right there were peak WrestleManias. Now, there are a lot of people that say WrestleMania 17 is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, which happened in the Attitude Era, but what about the other WrestleManias? WrestleMania 14, yeah, the Austin Era begun, was the beginning of Stone Cold's big push, but what else? Kane vs. Undertaker was great, but what else really stands out at that WrestleMania besides those two things? WrestleMania 15 was okay. WrestleMania 2016 was not a good WrestleMania. WrestleMania 18 is very overrated. The only thing that is really legendary that people still talk about on that WrestleMania is Rock vs. Hogan. You take Rock vs. Hogan off that card, does anybody really talk about WrestleMania 18 and the like they do? Because I don't think they do. The match quality, I believe, was 100% better. Now, the Attitude Era had legendary matches. I'm not saying they didn't, but the match quality in the Ruthless Aggression Era, I believe, was better. I think there are a lot more better matches in the Ruthless Aggression Era. Now, I had mentioned before, the Attitude Era was peak when it comes to ratings, but there were a lot of things that happened in the Ruthless Aggression Era that also still drew a lot of ratings. The Edge and Lita live sex celebration, still to this day, I believe, is the most highest rated Watch Raw segment ever. The battle of the billionaires between Trump and McMahon happened at one of the most bought WrestleManias in history. The Attitude Era will forever be legendary and the most important era in WWE history because of its pop culture effect. I mean, the Attitude Era single-handedly saved the WWE and won them the Monday Night Wars. The Attitude Era, I believe, was fully developed off character work from a lot of people, and the Attitude Era definitely had better characters than the Ruthless Aggression Era, but I think the Ruthless Aggression Era produced better match quality, had better matches with superstars. There were superstars who were in the Attitude Era that I thought peaked better during the Ruthless Aggression Era, became bigger stars, and some became bigger main event stars. A lot of great storylines happened during that era. Like I said, they had the best WrestleManias of any era in WWE history, hands down. I believe people put the higher echelon on the Attitude Era and rank it higher because of the popularity that it had around that time frame. Like, if you were alive then and you were watching the Attitude Era around that time frame, it was a great time to be watching. It's memories that you'll never forget. But I strongly believe the Ruthless Aggression Era peaked more with storytelling, with match quality, with creating superstars for the future. I just feel like the Ruthless Aggression Era had a better peak.